Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Song.
Yes, good
Thank
morning.
you so much for allowing us to interview you. I'm Ann Chow, and my partner is Patricia Wong, and we're from the Houston Asian American Archive. And today is October 11th, Thursday, 2018. We'd like to start the interview program by asking if you can tell us where you were born and a little bit about your childhood.
Okay. First of all, let me thank you for coming. We appreciate that you're making this long trip. I was born in Shanghai in 1935. When 2 years after I was born, you may not be old enough to go back to that period of time. That was the beginning of the Japanese War. So we moved to Chongqing. My family, my father and myself moved to Chongqing. And there I was there for at least 8.5 years during the 8 years fighting against the Japanese during the war. And after war, then the country was, of course, then was in a settled state. The nationalists were in war with the communists, the current government, and we moved out of China in 1948 to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I remember I studied junior high school for 2 years. It was a tough time because Cantonese is a little different than the language that I learned, which is Sichuan and also Guiyu. And then, of course, my native, not native in a sense, my parents are from Suzhou, so we speak the Shanghai dialect more or less. So it took a long period of somewhat difficult learning, and we learned Cantonese. And then the Korean War started. So we were fearful that the war might affect Hong Kong. So we hurriedly, when I say we, I mean my family, my father, mother, and my siblings came to the United States, and we found out that we couldn't stay, and for a reason which we could go into, that at the time it was a tail end of the Asian Pacific Exclusion Act, otherwise known as the Warren-McCarran Act, which only allowed like 105 Chinese per year. So everybody who comes over to this country from that area, and China, of course, is the target area, would be considered potential immigrants, so we couldn't stay. So then we went to Brazil. In Brazil, I stayed for approximately 6 months, maybe a little bit more. We didn't go to school or anything like that, but just acquired our residence in Brazil. And as a result of acquiring the permanent resident status in Brazil, we were then able to obtain non-immigrant visa because we now have a place to return, technically speaking, from the immigration law point of view. So then we came into the United States as a student. My sisters and 2 brothers came one brother came in as a student. Then, of course, when we came in here, the immigration, in those days it's called Immigration Service, Immigration Naturalization Service, consider us a potential immigrant or a bona fide non-immigrant. So we were detained, and I recall I was on Ellis Island approximately three months. I go through hearing. Ellis Island now today is a very interesting historical place now for people to visit, and I even have my family's name in the roster of the people that on the Ellis Island. So that was a bit interesting story. Shall I continue?
Well, going back a little bit, when you were in Chongqing, what was your father's profession, and how many siblings do you have?
Okay, sure. My father, my father had a very interesting childhood. I don't know if you want to hear all about that. But anyway, answer your question directly. He was in the bristle business. Bristle business is the hog hair. And hog hair, as you know, a part of the hog, hog is a pig, right? In here we refer to as hog. and that strip of hair in the back is long and stiff, right? And that hair is utilized for brushes, for paint brushes and so forth. So he was in that business at one time. He was one of the largest white bristle manufacturer in Chongqing. So that was essentially what his business was. Zhuzhong, we call it. Zhuzhong.
I remember, I think Vera mentioned when we were together in Houston that he was an orphan.
Yes.
Do you want to tell a little bit about your father's story?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My father always, I always love to hear my father's story. As against, not against, as different from my other siblings. But I was the next youngest. For 8 years period, I was the youngest one, right? So Chinese family favors the oldest one, no question about that. And sometimes the youngest one also gets a little bit more attention. So my father tells me the story. His father died when he was 3. And his mother, of course, my grandmother, real grandmother, was not able to raise him, could not afford it, so gave him to the uncle, his uncles, for as the son. Chinese have that practice, right? If you couldn't raise your son, you give it to your relative to raise as a son. Well, that would be quite normal, and you would say, what's bad about that, right? The son, your uncle did not have a son, and you got the son from your brother who died, and that would be fine. Except the uncle, my father's uncle's wife, is from the brothel, not a good reputable place. When my grandfather, my real grandfather, was alive, because he and his brother, it's very similar in terms of voice, in terms of look, and my grandfather, I was told by my father, would always come home and sometimes mistaken by the by the wife of my I thought maybe it was him, right? And he would be always very angry because he looked down upon. So and so there was that hard feeling in the family about each other. So when my grandfather died, and my father was given to him to raise as his son, the so-called grandmother, who had no children, then sort of took revenge on him, on my father, and they also adopted a daughter. That's my my father's uncle, right? Also adopted daughter, but the daughter had no relationship with the family, right? No blood relationship, but it was treated very favorably, so to say. And then the description to me was the Chinese wear the qipao. Qipao is a Chinese gown, right? The woman is on one, close your qipao on one side, and the man close on the other side, right? So my father gets to wear what his sister's clothes. And when he goes to school, everybody, of course, noticed that he was wearing a female, the qipao, or the qipao is a robe. I guess you could call it a robe, right? And so he was always jeered at and made fun of and so forth, and he didn't have proper shoes to wear and this, and so it really took the punishment that my father gave it to the mother, and so it was revenge on him. So much so that he said that he had attempted suicide 3 times. It was that tough. So so that was the story about my father in terms of childhood as an orphan. As a result of that, he is always particularly conscientious of people, the orphan. And when he becomes successful in his very young age and worked extremely hard, I will show you a book about him. This is part about him. So what he did was he said, okay, and I become successful and made a good, amount of resources, and I will now try to develop an orphanage. And in that orphanage, which is right next to the factory, and he had the conception that orphans, nobody taken care of, said we will make young, meaning let the orphan develop right into maturity, and the orphan can always have a job to go into the factory. So his factory had approximately 1,000 people working, but he had the orphanage, almost 1,000 orphans, a small orphan. And that was his story in Chongqing until the time when the nationalists pulled out of China, pulled out of Chongqing, and they were defeated by the current Mao's government. So that was the story about that childhood. But there are many things during that childhood I can remember. It was during the Japanese War, how the Chinese fleet from the Japanese of course, invasion. We were in Chongqing. The Japanese could not conquer or extend itself into the interior, but they tried to bomb the city into submission. And that was a period of time, I guess my wife told you about. His father fought in the Air Force, I remember. And I remember in Chongqing, there were 3 air shelters, and we call it Fangkongdong. Fangkongdong is a natural cave, and you see in here, in this country, the very beautiful caves, right? I forgot, it was in Tennessee where you could go in there, you see the drips as a result of the calcium drop down, almost like teeth of the dragon. Just 龙洞, right? They call it 龙洞. And there were 3 these type of air shelters in Chongqing. And when the Japanese Air Force would come bombing, it comes first with they have this, in the high part of the city, or wherever they find it, they will have 3 type of ball color, right? And the first, when the airplane is no longer there, you would have the green one, and when the airplane is coming, you have the yellow one coming up, and then they would have the red one coming up. That means the airplane is already there. When that comes, then you will hear the siren. blowing. And I just described sort of, about the old days. And so one day the Japanese came, and people were, of course, in the shelter. Thousands of people in different 3 shelters, and we don't know who informed the airplane, the Japanese bombers, and they bombed the entrance to the three air shelters, and the people were suffocated to death. In terms of thousands of people, they said you can hear people wailing. Even after they opened the shelter, removed the dead bodies, they said the spirit was there. It was so bad, and it really, in that period of time, and I remember I was of course young then. I wanted to. In those days, we joined the 童子军, the like Boy Scout thing, right? And you want to march. I said, "Gee, I want to be a soldier." Everybody wanted to fight the Japanese, right? And one interesting experience I told in an FBI interview for an employee, he became my friend. Unfortunately, he died. And I said, one experience I can never forget in Chongqing, when the United States dropped the atom bomb. The story was the atom bomb is about the size of a golf ball, but it's not, right? We all know now it's not a golf ball. And the Japanese unconditionally surrendered after the second atom bomb dropped in Japan, in Hiroshima. So everybody was so ecstatic, so happy, and went to the local town. And Chinese always liked firecracker. Firecracker is a tradition. Every New Year's we light firecrackers, and firecracker is supposed to be getting rid of the evil spirit and welcome the new year coming. And as a kids, we always get so excited about New Year coming, for 3 days, and the firecracker. So all the firecrackers in the store were gone, and everybody's lighting firecrackers. Oh, I was so happy. I was jumping, and when people get high, they say when you're an athlete, sometimes you get high. I felt like I was in the air. I was going higher and higher. I was flying, and that experience lasted with me, even when years after. Now I don't dream about it anymore, but I dream about floating in the air because of that experience.
And then, so when did your father decide to leave everything in Chongqing and start again in Hong Kong?
Yeah, that was interesting too. When the agitation comes, of course he was regarded as the industrialist, right? And so when the strike is no small thing when you have 1,000 workers, right, come strike. And then my father would have them, they were all there striking, get together. He would explain to them, say, look, why don't we just cooperate? It's a good thing. You people have a good place to make a living, and we're doing good things for the village, for the society. So the crowd dissipated, all right? So that was fine. And then as it get closer to the evacuation of the nationalists and coming more of the people's government, the strike organized again. This time, though, it was vicious because there were people in there that really was agitating. And I remember when I was a child, sometimes we live in home was away in Huangguoyang, which is Nan'an. The factory was near Chongqing City itself, I suppose, because of more population there. All right, and we then he then had the police department then had machine guns and so forth guarding the entrance. And then my father said, well, if you cannot listen to reason, then there's no choice for me. And people just didn't think that he would leave and abandon all his assets. But he saw that much. I really think my father was great in that sense. He sort of predicted the difficulty time at that period of time. He said, no way for him to survive, you know, in the environment that was then he was put into. So he said that we have to leave. So he picked up everything, closed the factory, abandoned all his assets in China, and for a while not only he had office in Chongqing, but he had branches in different major cities in Chongqing. And I even remember I went to Hankou. Hankou 是在什么湖？Hankou 是湖北啊。Yeah, along that area, and went to school there for a short time. But then he said, no, we have to evacuate, we have to leave. So he picked up the family and left all his assets in no time, and just go. And so that was how that happened. And I went back after the Tiananmen incident. The year after, we went back to China for a visit, and we still saw the remnants of the factory and saw the school where the orphanage was. And I remember going into the miao, you know, the garland, 有两个菩萨哼哈而降，你知道吧？ Yeah, that is the two Chinese, you know, has an interesting brand of Buddhism. It's mixed with the Chinese culture, ancestor worship. You people who study Asian must understand that. The guarding the gate of Jiulin Si was two figures, two warriors-like thing, very
like Mason or more than
a very terrible figure, scary figure. And I remember when I was a young kid, we had to go in there. I just close my eyes, run in, you know, run back. So this time we went back to Chongqing and see the Baota. You know the Baota. There's a pagoda, right? And the pagoda was still there in 2009, right? 2008 with Tiananmen, 1998, yeah, 99. And the Baota was there. We had a guide, and took us back because we wanted to see, you know. And then when we left, and they sent us a newspaper and wrote. They said, "Oh, Baota 现灵了," you know, the pagoda came alive because, you know, pagoda, the history about pagoda is I don't know, some people say pagoda buried some underneath where the pagoda is, there's some mystic things, right? So 显灵了. I said, how's with some 显灵呢? There's a pagoda. Around the pagoda there was a halo. And then I read the newspaper, the clipping. They said they discovered that. They'd never seen that before. The halo was created by the locust. 蝗虫.
Oh.
Locust.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a thing. I wish I had saved those things. In those days, I was so busy trying to make a living. You know, your husband must know how it goes.
Yeah. So your education. Tell us about your educational path. You were all over the place. It sounds like.
Yes, it was all over the place. I hardly had any place that I could really study Chinese. And I said, the Japanese would bombing, and we would be running to air shelters, those high schools, so forth. Then, but anyway, in Hong Kong, there were 2 years, junior high school. We did have it, you know, peaceful time, really study in Chongqing, hardly. But my father did do one thing. He hired a tutor, a Chinese tutor. He believed in 老法书. in-law, I mean, in the old Chinese tradition, he admired Confucius, Confucius philosophy. He always admired of that, and he himself, even though he said he did not have that much, he was educated in a Christian missionary school, and that was interesting too. I'll tell you about that one, and then so we did have, I think maybe about 3 or 4 months of big the 大学. Confucius has 4 books, right?
45经.
Yeah,
Five classics.
Yeah. 大学, we had to memorize it. Don't care whether you know about this or not, you understood it completely, you had to memorize it. So we memorized it. And before that, there was 两个小的什么经, I don't remember.
三字经.
Yeah, yes.
That's for children to start off.
Yeah, we had to memorize it. 人之初性本善，是不是啊？就这个 There's a lot of philosophical difference of whether 人之初性本善还是性本恶。But that was interesting, and.
What was the name of the high school in Hong Kong? Do you remember?
In Hong Kong, I do remember
Mm-hmm.
that. The high school in Chongqing is 重镇学校, something like that. But anyway, didn't have chance to really study. But we did have that little bit of exposure, the tutoring of the 中国 thing. And when I went to Hong Kong, I went to 培英初中 yeah. 但也有高中的, 培英也有高中. So I studied there 初中2年, and it was a very good education. But in China, you when you study, you really have to study. And I remember studying chemistry over there. After I studied chemistry over there, even though in here I had to repeat this chemistry in here, I thought I knew everything, in chemistry. And one time I thought I was going to go in medicine.
So then from Hong Kong, you came to Brazil and then came to the United States.
Right.
Right. So, and you said you did not go to school in Brazil.
No, it was a short time and did not go into Brazil. And after we acquired, because we wanted to come to the United States to study, and so after we got our permanent resident status, we were able to have the American Consul issue a student visa for us. Now we came in as a student, and then immigration law is 2-part. I tell you that because I practiced immigration law for 20 years, or thereabout. Okay, so one part is the consulate issuing the visa, allow you to officially, attempt to enter the United States. At the time you enter the United States, there's what they call the inspection before you're formally admitted. During that period of inspection, they can then determine whether or not you're bona fide according to the visa or not. So that's the second step, and there's where they decided you are not bona fide non-immigrant student. We didn't even know what is bona fide, not bona fide. We didn't even know. Okay, all we know is we had a proper paper, So we went in on the Ellis Island, and hearing after hearing after hearing. A very interesting part is the hearing officer. When I started to practice law, they recognized me. I recognized them. It was so funny. And they said, "Oh, let me go dig out your immigration paper here." What are you doing here? I gave them a hard time. I gave the immigration service, the immigration director, a real hard time. I used to litigate cases after litigation. I would pull people from the airplane. They were about to be deported. Some of them even on the airplane. The rule, you heard of the writ of habeas corpus, the American legal jurisdiction was proud of always the writ of habeas corpus. Any person who are detained, right, has a right of applying for a writ, what they call. That is, if you could write this on the toilet paper, and if you have a way to have it presented to a judge and say, I have been detained and I do not know the reason for the detention, and according to the American jurisprudence or Anglo-American jurisprudence, the judge can then sign an order, say, bring forth this prisoner to a hearing to determine whether or not he is rightfully detained. So that's what we call it. I don't know how many writ I filed and how many people I took them off from the airplane.
Wow.
Even you know, so it got to the point what the immigration service in New York said, oh, this guy, I was called down on the to the district director's office. Says, why are you doing this to us? Well, you know, then so they say that you know, there's a process before you can go to the court. You have to ask the district director application for stay of deportation. Upon his denial, then we can go to court, right? Now he would say, okay, you submit your application, and he won't decide until he have the prisoners, people ready to be deported, prepared, right, on the airplane, right? By the time you get to the court, the guy is already on the airplane, gone. So because it's outside the jurisdiction of the court, the court has jurisdiction within the territory of the United States. But I have had people went to Alaska, brought back, into Hawaii, brought back. Then what they did was they avoided all that. They went from here to Europe, from Canada, to fly them over.
Oh, so you already left the country. You're no
Yeah,
longer
they took the Atlantic route instead of Pacific route. Anyway, it was so funny, and I had a good time. I remember, but people couldn't understand where this young guy, you know, I was then young then, right, was fighting left and right and having a good time bringing the people in, and you know, at one time I had 11 or 12 people was working in Long Island. The immigration service raided the restaurant, and got them all 12 together. Every one of them had my card in their pocket. They figured maybe I committed a crime in importing these people in, right? But they all find out that these people were they from mouth, you know, and they all got my business card, so they know when they are here, they arrested, they call Tom's son, right? Tom would then go. I would then go to the call the bondsman, and the bondsman here would put up the bond, $2,500, would bail them out. But in many times in those days, they don't even have the $2,500 ready, but they have relatives they could put up, right? But if their association people call me, I trusted the association person, then I would put my credit with the bail bondsman. So the moment they arrested, the association people get noticed. Know that they call me, I call the bondsman. In the same day, they released.
Wow.
So it was an interesting battle in those days, and then well, there are many other things. It's also interesting. We you know, when all remedies failed, we would ask for congressional help to issue a private bill. And I remember Senator Fong of Hawaii did issue a few for. These are people, technically speaking, really are not entitled to stay because they come in as a crewman. crewmen are paroled into the United States, not really admitted in that sense, so they could not adjust their status here. But I would then, because they have skill, their chef, they needed it here. So I would then, using what we call six preference, and get them all prepared, Labor Department approved, and then send them out to a European country like Germany or some consulate to issue the visa. They come back again, so the interruption was very, very short.
So take us back to when you first arrived into the country and they went to Florida, right? And then were you in Florida for several years?
No, what happened was this: when we came over to this country, and after we were released from the detention from from Ellis Island, and actually they found out that they could not detain us anyway, because my father was then applying for treaty traders. That's where this book is. Treaty trader status is a special status awarded to alien whose country, has a treaty with the United States, and this particular person contributed substantially in terms of the trade with the United States. During Second World War, the bristle or hawk hair was considered as a strategic material. The reason for that is because hawk hair are used by the navies to paint boat, right? That's paint brushes, but you say, why didn't they use nylon to paint brushes? But if you examine the hawk bristle under a microscope, you'll find that the bristle has a small channel grow on the hair. So that channel acts like a pen, the pen that you like. So it absorbs the ink. So you don't have the hair. You absorb the paint. You don't have to dip the brush into the paintbrush so often, and you would then be able to paint it much easier. That's one reason. And then they use the brush to clean gun barrels, right? When you fire the gun barrel is hot. You couldn't use nylon. Nylon was then discovered in the Second World War. If you put the nylon brush in, the hot barrel will cause the nylon to curl, and it will lose its effect. So bristle was considered a strategic material. My father supplied a considerable amount of bristle to the United States. He was then qualified and awarded as a treaty merchant. Treaty trader. So his family are allowed to come in with him. But anyway, he was then applying. So finally they decided to release us, and probably to their regret.
But how did you go to Florida? What
Okay,
was the decision?
so then we went from New York to go to California, to a parochial high school, to study high school there for 1 year. And my mother then was here in New York, and she fell the victim of cancer. She had ovarian cancer. Then we had to come back, and after we came back, my mother passed away in 1953 or somewhere around that time, 53, 54. Then because so many of us are ready to go to college, my father said, well, it's a huge expense, and let's find a place that you can go to school, college. We didn't have time to think about which good school to go to, right? We just think about which, but so happened it was a good school. We went to Florida, Gainesville, Florida. So there we established our residence. He bought a ranch, a cattle ranch. That's where I become a cowboy for 7 years.
7 years. So you went to school, but you also was taking care of the ranch?
Yes, I went to school, and I would also took care of the ranch because my brothers didn't want to do it.
Oh, so I don't know if I asked you, how many siblings do you have? You have one brother or two brothers?
I have two. I have two brothers. My older brother came with me at the same time. My younger brother, my eldest brother came with me. Then my second brother stayed with my mother on a second trip came. But he later on joined me, of course. He helped. Brother Jim, he passed away. My older brother is still alive, he's still living in Gainesville. And then I have a younger brother who is mentally not somewhat deficient. They call it today with so many terms they can give to them, right? Somebody who just didn't. He did manage to pass 8th grade, and I remember such a hard time to teach him ABCD. But anyway, he passed away. So when we were in Florida, my oldest brother, did not want to participate. He likes to sing. He likes to have a lot of fun and so forth. And that's fine, happier life, and I can attest to that. And I was designated as the one to help.
And how big was it a ranch? You had
Yes.
cattle on it?
Yes, it's 1,200 acres. It's like 2 square miles. And we had as many as over 1,000 head of cattle. And that was some experience. Some experience.
And what degree did you get in the Florida? Is this Florida State University, Florida
The
Southern?
University of Florida.
Oh,
is
Gainesville.
in Gainesville. Florida State is in Tallahassee. Yeah. And the University of Florida later on, I mean, it was a land grant college, of course, and I studied because of the ranch. I studied agriculture economics, which is the production economics. It's microeconomics. Then after I got my bachelor degree, I got my MA. Then I went to the business school, furthered my study in finance and economics. I took all the courses to qualify to go into to PhD, I guess. But I don't have all A's. I have B's. Most of the B's, couldn't get all A's, and to go into to PhD program, you need more A's than B's, yes, as you know.
Yeah, but you were working too.
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
wasn't
well,
like-
that's right. But that 7 years working on the cattle farm is such an invaluable experience for me. You learn to understand the limitation as a person. You learn to know that your accomplishment or whatever you want to call it depends upon not just human factors, but depend upon God, depend upon 中国人讲 heaven, right? So there's so many experiences on the farm I could never forget. One day I said I'll write a story about my experience on the farm, what it taught me, and people say, well, we went to cultural revolution, and I said that was such a hard time for them. I said, I don't think you have ever gone through the hard time on the farm that I went through. You don't want to hear the story? You don't want to hear the story?
Well, we would love to hear the story, yeah.
Two things on the farm. On the farm, it depends on nature. To live. The two things that's somewhat interesting. When I was a rancher, when I got on the farm, I saw the cowboy. We had 3 cowboys were rounding up the cattle in the pen, And I said, gee, that would seem like a lot of work, making the cattle run into the pen and put them. It's kind of like, not humane-like, right? I said, what are you doing to these cattle? He said, well, the cowboy is very abrupt and short. He said, we're pinning the cattle for TB test. They have to test to see if they're TB. You put them cattle in there, you put them in the chute, you squeeze the chute so they couldn't move, and they take a test. TB test. Okay. And I said, well, do you have to go through that? He said, well, listen. He said, if you want to learn how to raise cattle, you should get on a horse. Tell me. And I was then 18 and a half or something like that. I said, gee, that's a challenge, to me. So I went there next day. They were painting the cattle. I said, please give me a horse. So I got on a horse. Remember, I'm supposed to be the owner's representative, right? I got on the horse. They were there running, pinning the cattle. Didn't want to pay me any attention. I followed them on a horse. And the horse, when they run and so forth, it bounces. You have to know how to take the shock. If you don't take the shock, you're banging against the seats like this. After the third day, I could not walk down the stair straight. I had to walk down the stair like this, sideways. But then, after I recovered, I learned. I then become a full-fledged cowboy. I could ride a horse. I had no problem. They could not tell me anything that I don't know. You get on the horse. People get on the horse. Make sure the saddle is tight. The Western saddle is not the English saddle for riding, right? The working saddle with a horn. You rope the calf and so forth like that, right? So you make sure, and then you would step on the stirrup, we call it stirrup, and then cross, right? But the cowboys would take hold on the horn by one hand and then jump right off. So I learned to do that. Okay, you could jump, I could do that. That was those days. So that was one interesting experience. Then, collateral to that, in the day when I was raising cattle, there was calves. When the calves were born, the navel cord are raw. Still blood right from the front thing. There is a fly in those days called screwworm fly. Screwworm fly, the interesting characteristic, they would lay their egg on raw flesh. The raw flesh they would then hatch, become worm. The worm would eat the raw flesh and then would drop off. And then when they drop off, when they mature, they go into another metamorphosis, become then fly. They would then continue that cycle that way. So the duty of the cowboy in those days was to catch the calf. Some calf may be already running, 2 or 3. You run the calf down, rope them down, tie their leg up, and then pour tar over their navel cord. That was a tough job, really tough job. And look amount the energy you waste in trying to catch the calf and do the thing here. And then what I want to tell you was that the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the entomology department, discovered that these screwworm fly will only breed once. Because of that characteristic, they then breed these flies in laboratory en masse, in big quantity, but bombard them with radiation so they all become sterile. And then they relieve them every 2 square miles, a box of these fly. And these fly then go mate with the other fly, and then the screwworm was eradicated in 2 years. That was some achievement. Science, I personally witnessed how well that worked. In 2 years, screwworm flies was eradicated. We didn't care about the continuation of species. That was a bad species. It was dangerous. They say if screwworm had existed, it's probably through some kind of mutation during the Civil War. It would have been awful. People would die.
So how did you go from a cattle farm in Florida to New York City?
To New York City. Well, if you don't mind, I'll tell you one small incident about the farm, and I'll tell you how I got to New York City. So then, in the winter, we need to raise cattle by growing like oats, we call it, or wheat. That type of things grow in the winter, right? So the cattle can eat and get fat, so to say. So one autumn, we decided to plant 300 acres of oats. That was the appropriate thing to do. I studied and make sure the type of fertilizer, the oat seeds and so forth. I got on the tractor and plowed the land. And it was 105 degree heat. And then finally we sowed the seeds, covered up. And lo and behold, there was no rain. In Florida, you never heard about no rain. All the way, every day, it would not germinate. I was looking to the sky, hoping that it would be rain. You were just so frustrated. You were so anxious. You were so worried, and you spent so much time and money building, fertilizer thing. You were just totally exhausted. That kind of emotional exhaustion you never experienced. And finally, in February, the rain came just a small little bit. So the entire season was a devastation for the cattle. So I said, that experience taught me. I then think back when I came to New York. Why? Why I came back to New York? My mother died. My father decided to get remarried. That gave us a relief. We don't have the responsibility of taking care of our parents, right? My father got married, so he was in California more often than in Florida. So I decided that it was time to put the farm into Soil Bank. Soil Bank is a program by government to take the productive land from production and plant into trees. And trees was then very much needed because the pulp, fence posts and the light poles and things like that, pine trees, right? So we put all the land into trees, planted a tree. And then I felt that was accomplished. And it was a good return because the government gave you subsidy, not only in terms of planting, but also they rented your land in a sense for 12 years. After the 12th year, you're on your own because the tree is big enough now, so that you then have to, you're able to, if you wanted to get income, you could get some income to carry you through, or you could just let it grow for 20 years and then harvest the tree for fence posts and so forth. So then I left and came back to New York. My father was against it. He said, well, why don't you stay in Florida? You went to school, you got your MA, you went to graduate school more, study for finance and so forth. I saw that making a living on farm, it was just not the future. It was very difficult. You have to have a big operation to make the farm grow. So I came to New York, and then that's how I started working. You might saw it on my resume. First job was with General Telephone, and I became the first economic analyst. General Telephone, of course, became Verizon later on, and I helped them develop a couple of important things. I found that the telephone gains. I had a lot of statistics of what they produced, but nobody analyzed it. So I found there's a pattern, typical pattern, to the telephone growth, and that pattern conforms to the business cycle. Is a coincident indicator. In other words, when the business cycle is up, the telephone gain is up. The business goes down, the telephone gain goes down. So with that information, then you can predict, if the tool that you can predict business cycle, you can predict the telephone growth. And with those information, you can then appropriately predict or plan your budget for plan, for to build the additional equipment and plan. So that was an important information for telephone in
And
those
then
days.
I understand you also went to night school to study law.
Yes, then I went to night school because when I came over here, my purpose was trying to go to night school too. And then I decided that, I could go and try to go to NYU to study more. I got all the courses anyway in finance, even accounting. I lack one course in accounting, that's auditing, to become an accountant. So I said to myself, well, no use, let's try to study for PhD. And they won't want me for PhD anyway because, my grades are all B's. I do have some A's, not that many A's, but mostly B, students. I don't think I have any C's though, but anyway. So I decided to go to law school. And going to law school, it was an expensive proposition in Columbia Law School. They don't have a night school program. St. John's has a night school program. Brooklyn Law School had a night school program. So I went at night instead of 3 years, 4 years, and that was really, really tough. Out of the 85 people that went in, only about 30 or 35 people graduated. And I tell you, it was so tiring that I said, and I had a very responsible job. I went in as after the economic analyst, I went in as financial analyst to Ford, and short time before I moved to Dearborn to McCall Corporation, and I wrote some paper and told them why they lost money in the Stanford paper, and everybody praised me up and down, the controller. then shortly I got a notice from your job's being eliminated. Well, why I found out is because my paper criticized the commercial printing division. The vice president gets so mad for my, that's working for somebody else. That's a problem. So then, that was a good thing. So I went to Kroll Collier, applied for financial analyst positions through the headhunters, right? In those days, employment agencies, and the financial analysis department manager say, "Oh, that sounds good. We'd like to hire you." And then I don't hear from him. Then all of a sudden, said the vice president of finance would like to see you. I said, "Oh, okay." So I went to see him, and he said, "Listen, I know you came in here and applied for as a financial analyst. I forgot the guy's name, the manager. He said, but I'd like you to be my assistant." He said, "Are you sure everything you said on the resume?" "Yeah, sure, I'll give you the paper." He said, "Well, you be my assistant. What's the salary you like? Don't tell me sky is the limit." Chinese were very modest. I should ask for sky. But I asked for double the salary, and in those days it's somewhere around $300. But that was a good salary. So I become his assistant, and while going to law school, and that was the important job because all the subsidiary controllers report and so forth I have to review, I criticize, and they don't probably like me very much. I, I don't have the real authority, but I was there criticizing. So Jim Brennan, the vice president, so finally after a year or so, he said, Tom, I'm going to leave now the company, but I want to put you in a good position. So I could have followed the corporate route, I suppose, And I said, well, Jim, what is the position that you have for me? He said, well, Macmillan Book Company, which is a large book company, right? In those days, it was the largest book company. I don't know today what they are. And he said the manager of that department has 16 financial analysts, and you could be the manager there. And I was then about 27, 26, 27. So I said, Jim, I thought about it. I said, thank you, Jim. I said, I'm just about finishing my law school. I so much wanted to try it, to practice law. I said, if I don't do it in 1 year, I said, I'll come back to the financial field. So that's how I started my law practice.
And then you hung up your shingles in immigration law, was it in Chinatown?
No, I didn't. So what I did was I went to a law firm, which my family had a relationship. The guy who wrote this applied for my father, Leon Finley. I went to see him to get some advice. I would then make him, of course, making a good salary. Then I said, I called him Uncle Leon. I said, listen, I am thinking about starting to practice law. He said, well, you could come practice with me. So that would then call firms called Finney and Gore. And I said, well, he said, what would be salary? He said, well, as a clerk, I only can give you $75 a week. $75 a week. I make 4, 5, 6 times more than that. I said, well, I tell you what, just put my name on your letterhead. Okay, I will try to bring in the cases. If I could not handle the cases, you can handle it. All right. Your firm can handle it. But let me have my name on your letterhead. And if you have a little office space for me, and I'd like to, sit there. And there were about 5, 6 Jewish lawyers. They said, the joke was, Tom, you are in Finley is actually Finkelstein. He changed his name. And your name should be changed to Shapiro. So after I stayed there for about 3 months or so, I saw these lawyers and how they do it. I've done a lot of these things here in contract. I've seen so much of it. So I decided then I would go to Chinatown to serve, to see if I remember I only have 1 year time.
Yeah.
I said I will go to Chinatown. Let me see what I can do to serve the people there. So when I went to Chinatown, I said, if I go to Chinatown, I got to do something for the community, right? For them to feel that you are here, really contributing to the community. And I'm not Cantonese, and I'm not Toisanese. You really, in New York anyway, you have to be Toisan. Toisan is a small little town. In Canton, and they are the original railroad builders, right? That's how they come in. They remember Chinese Exclusion Act. No Chinese can come in. Toisanese were dominant. If you don't speak Toisanese, you don't speak Chinese. Right? That's what that was the quoting. So I went to the Chinatown. I said, I got to do something for the community. So first thing I did was to find out what do they need. So they lack. There was hardly any Chinese lawyer. There were 2 Chinese lawyers. One good lawyer, Benjamin Gim. He had a good background, lawyer. Another one is Norman Key. Norman Key's father used to sell paper son, paper father. Brokering this thing here. That's what the Chinese Confession Act came in. So I said, well, okay, you guys took all the good cases. There's no cases for me. So what I'm going to do? So I could do two things. I found myself a little place on Pell Street, 16 Pell Street, second floor. In the morning when you go to the office, you have to jump over the garbage bag. They're literally true. That's how tough it was. Jump over the garbage bag. And there were two insurance guys were there, and I said, well, let me share your office with you. He says, okay, you could take the real back office. So I took the back office, dark, hardly any lights and so forth. So I took the back office, set up a table, desk there, and hang up my shingle as a lawyer over there, and they then started referring cases to me, difficult cases. Okay, nobody won. So I took the first case that I had with the difficult Chinese confession case. The man was here, Willie, we'll call him Willie, was here for how many, 20, 30 years, and coming as a paper son. And his wife was in China, could never bring his wife here. The paper is not clear. So I got him straightened out and brought his wife into the country. And then I started to write information about immigration law. And so nobody was doing this service. So the Chinese journal newspaper welcomed it. So everything I wrote about immigration law was always published. So I become well known. In those days, you cannot advertise. Lawyers could not advertise. Canon of ethics prevents lawyer from advertising. So, but through that, my name got well known, so people come in for small things, for big things. I remember at a time when Vera was born, we put her in a crib, right? And they would come in for a notary stamp, right? So I notarized it. I said, oh, no, nothing, sure. Then they would leave and they throw $1, $2, $5. One day we came in and we saw the $5 bill on the crib, right? So we took the $5. We went to China and had the best meal. That was so good. In those days, they call lonely. Lonely is flute.
Yeah, lonely.
Yeah, lonely. Yeah, flute. And it was a big lonely. We had such a good time with that $5. In those days, that $5 is better than $500 today's meal. that was an interesting feel. But anyway.
You also became chairman of the Benevolent Association?
No, I did not. I wanted to make sure that I will not be called to be criticized. People in community, I learned how to deal with the community pretty well in that sense. If there's any tint of that you are doing this for money, then your reputation is, the group that will attack you will say you're making money out of things, right? So I made sure there was no money involved. Everything is pro bono. So what happened was this: when I came in, I found out 中华公所 Chinese Benevolent Association has a Chinese school. The Chinese school, the principal, Mr. Liang, went to Puyin. He saw me, so you're from the Puyin Zhonghuo. In those days, they called the New York Public School, unincorporated, totally, informal, right? So he said, Mr. Sun, could you help us with the formally get us the charter, incorporate and so forth, and so I devoted, I think, approximately 8 weeks working for the community, totally pro bono. What I did was organize this school thing and got them a permanent charter from the Department of Education. To do that, it requires you to really go through the detail of getting things in. When you're young, you could do these things. And then I wanted to get them the tax exemption. That was a bit of a challenge. And I got them to do that. And then what else to do? 中华公所 existed long before, you know,
Yeah.
and the record was so messy, could not possibly get them the tax exemption status. So I said, well, how about the building that they occupy that produces the income? They call it Chinese Community Center. I said, let me take the Chinese Community Center and make them tax exempt organization. That's where the school is. So I got them tax exemption for that. And then, so I become the attorney representing the Zhonghua Gongsuo, and then all the other, because immigration law, all the other family association, Youyin, Daipang, and Chongzhen, all this association asked me to become the attorney. So I was the attorney for practically all of them. In those days, Chinatown was small. So you walk down to Chinatown, they all recognize you now because you did so much for the community, right? That was a good feeling. So I would never then lack of cases to do. So I was so busy, and then I moved to the Chatham Green commission, 217 Park Row. Established my office right next to Benny Ginn. I was so busy, so tired working as a lawyer. I said I can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People still be waiting online for me. So I said, gee, what I saw was I was taking everybody's problem as my problem. Working for them, solving their problem. So I said, gee, I really have to, thinking about how I should settle myself a little bit. But then I said, that's not right. That's after 20 years, and as a lawyer, and sort of burn out. You're tied to a desk all the time, doing 6 days a week doing this law practice, and even had the mafia. You wouldn't believe it. The reputation was so much so because I was bringing people left and right from from immigration service. They so upset with me. So one day I had a mafia guy came to me. He said, Mr. Sun, I said, you have a good reputation. We know you can do it. We have a guy that we just want to keep him here for 3 weeks or 4 weeks so that he has time with his family before he is deported. We know you can do it, and we'll pay you $5,000 for a fee for doing that. That was a huge fee then, right? I was so tempted to do it. And I said to myself, gee, should I do it? Should I do it? Once you get into this, next time they will ask you again, next time they're going to ask you again. And if you don't do it, you may end up in a garbage can. And you don't want the FBI following you all the time. And I want to do good for the community. And I was trying to help them with the law enforcement, the police department, and so forth. So decided not to take it. So that was that episode.
So then you decide to walk away from the immigration law business and become a banker. How did that happen?
No, yeah, I really never thought I would do that. They told me that they need banks is very much needed in this community. There was no bank that was controlled by the Chinese community, and the government in those days wanted you to establish a savings bank in China, in the Chinese community, because it represents people. They want to be represented. Federal Home Loan Bank was then a bank that supervises savings bank, federal. Their state savings bank. State savings bank too want you to do that, wanted me to do that. But I said if I had to do state, I might as well do federal. And so they helped me, lean backwards to help me get the charter. So I got the charter. I couldn't raise the funds. If I know Albert then, it would have been easy. They wanted $2 million, not capital. They call it subordinated deposit, which means you will be the last one to take out your deposit, right? That should be easy, right? I could not do that. Everybody says banks does not make money, and Chinese, I hate to say this, are not united in that respect. They don't want us to part their thing. So I couldn't raise it. Then the law changed. They converted the thing into a stock corporation. So we were the first one to came in under law in 1984 FIREA to be issued a charter for stock corporation. We converted from a mutual before the bank was open into a stock. So if we could get $2 million stock, then I tried to get stock was a little bit better, and people were willing to invest. But even so, I got a few people who invest very small money, like maybe about maybe $300,000. The rest of which I asked my family to put up to get the bank open. And I thought the bank open, that would be fine. My father always wanted to open, a bank. He was associated with Shanghai Commercial Bank, and we always thought maybe bank is the right thing to do, because that could really help a lot of people, not just one per person at a time. So we opened the bank. Three things were required in bank. One is the location. One is capital, which we got the $2 million. There's only $2 million in New York City. Today you could not do it for $15 million to open a charter, right? So then the third one is qualified, experienced personnel. So I was helping Mr. Liang in open up the United Orient Bank. That was the bank that I helped form before this bank. United Orient Bank could not raise the capital either. They got $2 million. State required $5 million. They lacked $3 million. We couldn't raise it. And finally, a guy by the name of Eddie Chen. Eddie Chen was a former deputy inspector from Hong Kong, who was sought by the Hong Kong government for crime. So he knew in advance he left, right? He was well informed, and he then controlled. He went to join the Arnyang because the money that he had and so forth. He then became the head of the Arnyang. Then he said, "I will put up $2 million, matching the $2 million you raised." And so United Orient Bank was Casey wanted to open the bank. Then I said to Casey, my position as a lawyer, I could not be associated with people who is not clean. And even though I spent, I don't know, in terms of legal fee, it must be $150,000 worth of my in those days of time in doing that to get the United Orient Bank formed. So I said, Casey, if you want to do it, it's your business. I understand you waited for a long time, and your personal feeling, but I just couldn't do this with you. So 2 weeks after open, I resigned. Everybody said I was very foolish. You should have got your money back anyway, like from fees and things like that. But I said, no, I want to keep clean. So that's how I formed the Abacus Bank.
Wow. That's amazing. So
and United Orient Bank 2-3 years later, of course, had a run because Eddie Chen said he was head of the bank, head of the Republican Party, and Chen, General Chennault's wife, said I have always been the head of the Republican for the Chinese, and how could you be then? They start to investigate what kind of guy this Eddie Chen is and find out all this criminal background. He walks around with a 保镖, you know what 保镖? Bodyguard with a gun. I had one meeting with him. He wants to talk to me, and I want to talk to him. I said, boy, this guy here, not me. If he said to approve the loan, I said no. What am I gonna do with a guy like that, right? Yeah, I can't compromise with things like that in principle. So I just walked away. So the Mrs. Chennault then reported to the friends in Senate. Senate conducted an investigation, find out what the background of Eddie Chen. Eddie Chen, they caused bank run. So everybody said, Tom, you were smart. 2 years earlier, you left. And Eddie Chen is the book, The Year of Dragon.
Oh.
It was written about him, Eddie Chen, The Year of Dragon. He was a real criminal. Real criminal.
And was the Abacus open at this location? This is the
Abacus, then Abacus was okay. I was on the side. I was doing the real estate business. When you're young, you're ambitious. You do a lot of things. Nothing phases you. It seems like everything you do, you're successful, right? Now everything you do is a block. But so I own a lot of real estate. Started off with the first real estate. Oh, was an interesting story. You never had time to hear all those. With nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, one story. We have time. If you can share
You want one story?
Yeah.
Well, as I was practicing law, I befriended a second mortgagee, a guy who lends out to a second mortgagee. He lends out money as a second mortgage. So first mortgage from the bank, they maybe needed more money or somebody, then he would come in and get a little higher interest as a second mortgage guy, right? Ben Mellerman, he's the guy, 犹太人. So I befriended with him. He liked me, and that's one good thing though. When I was young, I always had 人缘好. I always had people that liked me. The teacher likes me. And the reason I was able to establish myself in here, not being a Cantonese, was also because when I was 18, when I was in New York that time, I went to Chinatown, came to Chinatown to 拜师傅. Zhongguo人 拜师傅.
Right.
功夫.
Oh, for Kung Fu. Were you learning Kung Fu?
Yeah, Kung Fu.
Oh, okay.
Kung Fu, 拜师傅. I came to Chinatown. I said I want to learn Kung Fu. Who should I do to learn Kung Fu? He said, Kung Fu master, Master Wang. You should go to see him. I saw Master Wang Wentai, and he become good friend of mine. He doesn't want to charge me. He trusted me and taught me everything that he knew. But I had such compacted time before I go to Florida. That was during just finished high school time. 3 months, and he is he's well known. His teacher was Wang Feihong. Wang Feihong. Wang Feihong is
his teacher.
Yeah, his teacher.
Okay. Wang Feihong.
Wang Feihong.
Okay.
And he said he also learned from Hou Yuanjiang. Hou Yuanjiang.
These are the teachers of your master. Of
Yeah,
your
my
your
the Wang Wentai.
How do you spell Wang Wentai?
Wang Wentai.
Okay, maybe W-E-N Tai.
Tai. Yeah. 他是福早派。龙福早就 Tiger Paw.
Okay, 胡早派.
Yeah, 胡早派. You can find out. So Wang Wentai. So after I left, he likes me so much. I'm talking about 人缘, He said to all the other people that are learning. He said, you people have to remember, you have a 师兄 in Florida. Okay. His name is Xun Kaixing, Sun Qichen. So when I came back 10 years later to China to practice, he died, but his disciples came over to said to me, "Oh, 拜我是师伯."
Yeah, because now you're more.
I'm elevated
senior,
now.
Senior,
I'm super. So in a sense, I have an underground support from not being a Cantonese, but I have the support of in the ground support.
Amazing.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking about
The location of the bank, right?
yeah,
Into the real estate
the
business.
really. So I had a location in on Market Street. I said I held up this charter for 2 years. It wouldn't open. The regulator called me and said, Tom, he said, you know, you had the charter for a long time. If you don't open, we're gonna have to withdraw the charter from you. So I said, okay. I didn't find the right location, but I'll open it up in Market Street. It had to be a ground location, so they accepted that. And there was a lot of interesting story about the bank too.
It had to be a ground location?
It had to be a ground floor.
Oh,
The
okay.
ground floor.
Okay.
So we opened on Market Street. Market Street at that time is a narrow street down here, right? Now become popular because of the Fujinese thing here. And we had, so I opened up there while we're looking for this place here. And in Bowery, we bought the building in Bowery, and then and constructed the building in Bowery. In Market Street, we had a robbery, and that's it's so many interesting things. The first time the robber came, and they flip over the bullet barrier. We just started. We don't have the money to really build a nice barrier, and I had the construction crew, and I put up the you know, some a bank-like place. So they flip it over, grab the bag where you take to the give the armor truck to give to the Federal Reserve, right? And they took it away, and they call me, Mr. Sun. I said, what? They said, we have a robbery in Market Street. You know, I was still working in here. I don't even remember when we opened the place. I said, well, how much money did they take? You know, of course we were insured. I just make sure that it was within the insured amount. He said, well, they took nothing. They grabbed the 2 empty bags before we Oh, I said, oh, that's funny. I said, well, okay, just beware, okay. So I was busy trying to do other things. 3 weeks later, must be the same group came. This time, it's just like in the movie. 2 guys came with a hood, with a machine gun, guarding the front of the bank. 2 flip in, took the money that's in the bag, $300,000, and flip. And people passed by, they thought they were doing a movie or scene. 真的, you know, isn't that amazing? You talk about these things here. You actually go through that. It's a really funny. It's funny.
So how many years did you? The Abacus has been open 20.
In Abacus opened since 1984.
Oh wow! So it's now 30 years.
30-some years, yeah. 34 years now, yeah.
So you've had an amazing career in everything you've done.
Everything was then. This Bowery has 2 buildings, 6 and 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought, you know, that was in your peak of your career, right? You think, Mills, you cannot accomplish. You know, everything you touch, you always get done. So we said we're gonna construct. It was two old building. One part of which is a drugstore, old Chinese drugstore. In fact, the Chinatown Museum has part of the things in the museum there. We gave to them. They wanted. So one side has a restaurant, has a lease. The lease did not expire. Couldn't get them out. I said, okay, but I gotta construct this part here. So we started to construct. Then I hired a guy who is the head of the city demolition department, engineer. He retired, Sam Roberts. That guy should be totally knowledgeable about building, correct? You could not have anybody better head of the the building department, chief engineer and all that stuff. So we dig. On this side here, on the 8 Bowery side, the restaurant has no basement. Small, or maybe you had a basement, but anyway, very small. On this side, where now the Chinese drugstore is, had deep basement, all the way down. I said to Sam, the guy who I have is Portuguese guy, had doing the excavation for me. You have to underpin, which means building from the top down. That's required because you have to be on virgin soil. It's soil undisturbed, they call it. Really. I said, Sam, they tell me it's dangerous. You cannot go down anymore. Sam says, no, you have to go down. Your foundation has to be below this next door. That's the rule. You have to go down. Finish. We walked through. I told Manuel, continue to excavate the underpin. I walked back to Chatham Tower. That's where I have my new office then. As I get into my office, I hear siren, fire engine truck. Unbelievable. What's going on? Then when I get to the office, somebody called me. Mr. Sun, I think you better come back to 6 Bowery, where you were building a 3-story building. This was originally 6-story, superimposed. Finally got the 8-story on top. There's a collapsed building. So what happened was this: the underground dirt under 6 and 8 Bowery, because it was called, they call Canal Street for a reason, all right? Is all sand, and the sand was pure white sand, like sugar, all right? The lateral pressure from the side, because it's fluid, it's not solid, push the wall away. And so the next door neighbor restaurant dropped down like an elevator floor. When I came back, there was a lady trapped in the bottom of the elevator. My entire face, right side, become numb. At that particular time, and I tell you, no, honest to God, I felt it would have been better for me to be down there. Fortunately, she recovered from injury. She did not die. It's okay. We got her. She got out. Was in the hospital, and she was recovered ultimately. Thank goodness there was no fatality. But we did have a lawsuit. The lawsuit was from a lawyer, one of the lawyers who practiced law
In the building?
in Chinatown, whose father was the paper broker, Liu Deguang.
So he was your rival, right?
He's suing us.
Right, the son, the law firm.
Yeah, his law, Mr. Liu commenced to actually represent the restaurant, and he said, we want $2 million. I said, the whole bank's assets $2 million. No. So he dragged it out. The lease had 3.5 years to go. I then was able to find somebody, I mean, very young, to shore up the building, to restore it so he could go back technically. So that he will not be able to say that we prevented him from. You know what the final settlement was? $200,000. That's all he got. The lawyer got maybe 1/3, and the restaurant only got a little bit. I said, serve you well when you are. His thought was, I'm sure he told me, how could you, not from China, come here, open the bank, and I'm a lawyer in China, I couldn't do what you're doing. At that time, and you know how old I was? 50岁. So,
50 years old.
yeah, so then I remember my father always told me, 40岁 Confucius say,
Yeah.
不活, right? 50岁知天命. At 50 years old, you recognize and you realize no matter how much you think, how capable you are, whatever you think you can do, if God does not want you to be succeed, you will not be successful. So 准. At age 50, 你知天命.
So of course we probably won't cover Abacus this lawsuit in detail because the movie is there. But do you think that the successful outcome of this lawsuit also was somewhere related to Tianming, that you think it was in faith that God wanted you to succeed, that eventually you prevailed?
I always, you know, and when we formed this bank, I didn't form it with the purpose of making money. We hired a guy to be the manager of the bank. I thought I could do my thing, develop real estate. If I develop real estate, I would be like Frank, right? Frank. If I do not say that I would be 100 times better than I am now, at least 10 times, because I was then the first developer. Nobody ever started the thing. There was no transaction passed in Lower Manhattan, without me first know about it, because I was then associated with the Standard Abstract. I could have benefited doing real estate, but I choose not really completely choose. The guy who run the bank, James Tong, causes us to lose $30,000 every month. I look at our asset, look at the way he was running, absolutely have no knowledge of what business concept is. I said, if he continued to run the thing here, for 2 years, the bank would be totally going down the drain. Every month, $30,000. After 3 months, I jump in. Then I have to neglect my law practice. People say, well, you now run the bank. Your daughter has practice law for the bank, but we have a law practice before the bank. Busy, right? We're very, very busy, but we did it because we wanted the bank to succeed. So I spent all the time to do the bank. To this day, I do not take any salary from the bank. Any pro bono work involving the town and so forth, I told my daughter, Vera, do not charge them. They want to form a cemetery, you know, do it for free. I used to incorporate so many things. Don't do it for free, but that's okay. Good things will be added to you. Whatever you give, somehow or another, you get back one way or the other. Spiritually or financially, you get back. So that's how we did. So when the run started in 2003, people say, 你好定啊，廣東人講定啊 means you don't get nervous. Just how come you are so 定? Hui Ling would say to me, what are you going to do? They're going to be run. She asked me progressively, what are you going to do? I said, what are you going to do? I said, if you don't have to, if people will gather and you have a run. He said, what are you going to have a run? I said, you have a run, you know. I did my best to prepare the institution. We never took a dividend out. We let the bank build up its capital, you know, as much as it can. And I never gave the kids a salary increase. Of course, they don't need it. We give them real estate. They all by that, right? But if we did not do that, if I was not what I decided to start the bank, I would have been nervous. I don't know if the bank could survive. I doubt it. When I came back to the bank, in the first bank run, they say it was a run that you have not seen since the Depression. That's what the Associated Press said. We had all the branches. People were piling up, 5 blocks long. But when I did not know. I was in Florida. When I came back, the Associated Press, whenever I came back, I went on the line. I told the police, give me a bullhorn. In the morning, people started to gather, pile up way in the back there. I then announced to them, I'm here. I did not run away with the Carol Lim. They thought I ran away with this woman. Went to China, she was the vice president in charge of operation. They said I took $50 million with the woman, disappeared in China. That was the rumor, right? So when I came back, I said, I'm here. Everything should be fine, no problem, right? So the crowd disappeared. I'm dissipated. The next day they come back to deposit money. Honestly, just like the Bailey. So that's how the story about the Bailey compared with the Wonderful Life started in 2003, and we were under lots of pressure. When on my way back, Huilin was driving. I was in the car trying to understand what's going on, and I was still think was no big deal. I'll handle it, and the regulator called me. He said, Tom, he said, you should know that this is not fun anymore. I mean, you are in real dire strait. I said, what? The regional commission of OTS said. I said, what? He said, Federal Reserve Bank decided to pull their day credit. I said, what? They pulled the day credit. I said, Economic 101 will tell you when the bank is fundamentally sound, it needs cash. Federal Reserve Bank is supposed to inject cash to help the bank in that situation. We're totally sound, I said. We have the money, what they withdraw the day credit. I said, well, what about the Federal Home Loan? Well, I said to my people to take the liquid asset bond, government bond, so forth, to use as collateral to get cash. Well, that's normal. Who's our correspondent bank? Former regulator, who Federal Home Loan Bank, before they were separated, they were Federal Home Loan Bank, right? So I said, Mr. Sun, Federal Home Loan Bank, instead of giving you a haircut, decided to only give you 50% of your security that's worth. And that's so ridiculous. I said, I could take the security tomorrow, I can sell it. What is wrong with these people? So when I got to New York, I rushed back to New York. I dissipated the crowd. Of course, the liquidity was a big problem. Associated Press, every newsman, I was just like all the news people, man, want to talk to me. They run the never, seen since the Depression. So we went to Canal Street. We used to have a branch in Canal Street. We lost the Canal Street because of this lousy Vance case. We did lose a lot of 伤元气. So I went there. The newspaper asked me, said, Mr. Sun, the rumor is that you went with Carol Lim with $50 million, went to China. I said, what's your answer to that? I said, I look at the guy. I said, with a smile. I said, listen, whoever started that rumor doesn't know how tough my wife is. Everybody laughed. So that was the answer. So that was
if
that.
you had to do it again, would you still start at Abacus after all that's happened? Would you start Abacus again like you did?
Well,
30 years
yeah,
ago?
the people ask me that. I don't. My father is an extremely cautious person. I see how, because of his always questioning people, doubting people, how tough a life he has. Yeah. And I swear, when I grow up, I say, when I do business, I will always trust people. As a result of trusting people, I of course had the Harold Lim episode, right? And I said, I always want to trust people. This way here, I feel to be happier to in my lifetime. I still believe that. And I said, I don't want to regret. I always remember that the Confucius has a saying, right? If you're truly wise, you have no doubt. 智者不惑，仁者不愁. If you're really kind, you don't worry. Right?
That's great. So actually, yeah.
永人不惧.
Yeah.
If you're brave, surely prove you shouldn't be afraid.
That's right.
So I always say, if a decision is made and that comes out, that's God's will. So that's fine.
Yeah.
If I were to live again, to answer your question, I would probably do the same.
Wow. That's amazing. So we asked your children, Chanterelle, if she had any questions she wanted us to ask you. And she said she's always thought that you and Mrs. Song very much believe in the American dream. And she says, is that still true? And how much did that impact your decision to do what you did in your life?
Well, American dream is a term used for people who come in as an immigrant. Somehow they found success. In my case, of course, people, my family did have some assets, but when I left Florida, it was against my father's will. He did not want me to leave. He wanted me to stay, and but I thought the right decision is to leave because they're limited. So I borrowed $230 from his friend and came to New York. I did not use 1 cent of family money. So, but I must say though, knowing that there's always a place that I could return, gave me that confidence that otherwise I would not have without a family base to support me. So it's not totally by you, right? You might not make the same decision if you're totally desperate. But truthfully, I have not used any of my family's money to accomplish what I have made mostly accomplished. But that's just in a figurative way. But whether or not the dream is accomplished, I don't have any regret. If you believe in prayer, I always say that I thank God, not because the fact that I am able to have some control certain amount of assets or whatever, and of course to a lot of people there's nothing today. But I thank God for 2 things. One is give me the ability to analyze, again going back to Confucius saying, you have to know how to 分析, then to come to a decision, and you have to be thankful that you're well physically, that notwithstanding the tribulation and hardship that you go through in business, but that's sort of expected, right? You nothing comes smoothly. You always have something, and with that you hope that you can somehow return to the to the society, or something that you can believe, and you can say that I have done my best.
So maybe the final question. If you had to say one thing that you feel so proud to have accomplished in your life, what would it be?
I don't know. One thing that I have accomplished in my life.
Or maybe several of the most proud accomplishments, because you've had so many, it may be hard to choose one.
Yeah, in a sense, you could say you have so many accomplishments, it's hard to choose one, or you could say they have so many mediocre ones, you cannot find one good one to say. Well, I would say, of course, everybody always say, if your children grows up and they are not on drugs, they're all self-supporting, they're professional people, they are all honorable. That's certainly an accomplishment. And that's not my accomplishment. If I say that, my wife would say that's her accomplishment, which I have to readily agree. But jokingly, I always say that it's, even though it's your accomplishment, it was very hard for me too as well. I said, what do you mean by hard for you? I said, well, I have to set an example of how to obey the mother, I don't know. It's a lot of people can point to a lot of things that they accomplish a lot. I always think, sometimes I always feel like I could do more, but I haven't done more. I hope I could do more, but time is short.
Well, you've certainly done a lot. Do you have any questions, Patricia?
I guess I wanted to ask you, how have you seen Chinatown change in your time here?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting story. It may take a little time to tell you. When I first came in 2000, 1964, right? Coming here, Chinatown, of course, it was a very small area, and the total population in the United States, I understand they were saying it was like 270,000 Chinese. That's all. And then quickly grew to be something like 750,000 after the immigration law was changed to allow 20,000 Chinese to come in. Then the big change came into Chinatown. The first big change was the fall of the Vietnam. The fall of Vietnam, the history. The United States pulled out Vietnam, and a lot of people who was in Vietnam were supporting the United States policy, and among those who were Chinese. And the misimpression by the American government at that time was the Chinese communists and the Vietnam communists were friends, but not realizing the Vietnam had a lot of border conflict with the Chinese. And you remember the 7-day or a short, 7-week war. Deng Xiaoping went into Vietnam and went all the way to Hanoi, and in such a speed. But then he decided to pull out. After that, there was one incident that history may not know, and it is worthy of us Chinese to know, is that Vietnamese start to persecute the Chinese. But they did it in a way that unusual way. What they did was confiscated all the resources of Chinese who did not want to change their name, did not become Vietnamese. They confiscated their resources and gave them a small fishing boat and let them to sail out to the high sea. And that was during President Carter's day. when Vietnam fall and President Carter became the president, if you recall. So Chinese in the hundreds and thousands, and they were saying 500,000 Chinese died in open sea, and at that particular time, this is another story. And I spent 8 weeks again, stopped my regular practice, and then we decided that there's a mission there for us to accomplish. We need to do something to save the boat people, the Chinese people. I remember going into meetings and so forth, and because I know immigration law, I practice immigration law here. I consulted the immigration lawyer and find out what the protocol is for refugee. The first country of landing, the country must accept. And I was thinking how we can then bring this refugee on the high sea to island of Guam. And do you want to hear that story?
From Guam?
Guam,
Guam.
yeah. So.
Yeah. We may not have much time.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. So you don't have, I'll make it very short. So anyway, we went and tried to find ships to pick them up on the high sea and have them to sail to Guam. And that was not successful because the ship owner did not want to pick them up and go to Guam because afraid that the American government might hold the ships. So even though we came up with a plan, go parking in international water and have the fishing small boats send them into Guam. But anyway, it was a big tense moment. People was just dying. Mother Teresa was there trying to help. Reverend Tannenbaum, famous Jewish rabbi, and Cardinal in here in New York trying to help. And finally, who came to help? To answer your question there, come back to your question. The Quakers went and picket the White House. Carter was then the president. Everyone hold a candle. They say nothing. They just walk around the White House. And Carter couldn't take it. He sent the 7th Fleet, picked them up. Overnight, the Chinese population doubled, 700,000. That was the answer to your second part of your question. So that's a change over to Chinatown. And there, with that group of Vietnamese refugee, a lot of them end up in Florida, in Texas, in fishing, which they may not know the story. There's a lot of interesting story about them. Also in connection with the gang and extortion, because these young kids were militarily trained. So that changed the characteristic of Chinatown. The third major change was the Fujianese illegal immigrant came in, the Golden Venture people. If you connect that, the sister Pin Jie, I remember Pin Jie.
I read about her.
You read about her, all right, Pin Jie. And he came in, he brought the people illegally to come in, and the Fujianese people dominated. So now even New York, Brooklyn today, they all become very successful, prosper. They were willing to suffer and so forth. So characteristic and changed greatly because of that and complexity. So that's the story. In between them, all of the stories.
Well, thank you so much. And this is such a quick rundown of Chinatown history. I'm very impressed. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I feel like this is just the beginning. There's so much we need to understand.
Well,
you're
you're very kind and you're very ambitious. And I didn't even show you the orphanage front.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
No, I took some pictures.
Oh, you took some picture. Okay,
Since
so
we're still recording.
Yes. Could you maybe open and show us a little bit?
yeah, okay,
This way.
okay. Quickly,
I took some pictures of the table of contents.
Oh, I see. Well, okay, that was during the time when he built the orphanage.
Yes.
I mean, built the factory.
Right.
6. This is about that.
Oh, when you went back with the two Menshen, were they still there or they're gone? The two scary deities outside the front.
I didn't understand.
Oh, so you said when you were young, you would run into the temple because you're afraid of the two
That's
monsters,
right.
but they're gone.
They
That
they
temple-
were no more.
Oh, they
Yeah,
were.
绝灵寺 going. Now see, this is the orphanage. This is my father.
Oh my
This is the head of the orphanage, and these are the orphans.
Wait, which
Can you
one-
ma-
Can you put your finger in your father's
This is my
picture?
father.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So all these are the orphans that he was trying to support and
Wow.
build.
The 1,000 people.
There's 900 some people. I don't know how many people that
Wow.
you gather as many. And this is the Baotang.
Oh, this is
Xianling.
Xianling. The name of the company is right here.
Yeah. Apprentice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Send something Chongqing Relief
Mhm.
Institute to join work in the factory.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That
That's
was it.
important.
That's satisfying for him because he was an orphan,
Yeah.
and that was one photo. I think that
What an
book.
entrepreneurial way to.
Yeah, and there was another one. That's my father.
In his office, in the
Mhm.
factory office.
Yeah, Chongqing general manager. That was his handwriting.
Right. Do we have his name? Can you write his? Do you know his Chinese
孙
character?
穗林，if you, 哎呀，我的中文真差了。But anyway，
穗
孙是这个是
Yeah.
穗是好像一个，哎呀，这个林我现在忘记掉。You know what? Downstairs at the
Okay.
entrance door,
There's a plaque.
there's a wording 是引进资源。
Okay. I'll go
是
look
孙
at it.
yeah 孙穗
Okay.
林提的
Okay.
yeah I know if it's not spelled right I know these are the factory workers. That's part of not all of them but anyway
Mhm.
whatever he could gather
Right,
in that
right.
time.
And that's the factory.
That was 朱宗祥.
So he had to put this book together in order to get special treaty merchant status.
Yeah, in order to apply for the treaty merchant status.
Okay.
That's what it.
Wow.
So he had.
letters of recommendation, there are financial papers to show people.
Right. I mean, you see, Zhu Zong is in here. You know, how he dealt with the people in the this 这个 Zhu
哦
Zong
my
啊
goodness, so this is what the bristle looks like.
this black Zhu Zong. And it's in here and
It is really hard. So he
Yeah.
brought some with him
yeah.
when he came to the States.
This is a white Zhu Zong,
Wow.
白Zhu Zong.
My goodness.
Would you know? I don't know. I practiced immigration law for a while now. I felt like I knew more than he did, the lawyer.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
he never went through the problem that I did in bringing people from the airplane.